Welcome in to the Lady Vol Basketball Fever podcast, part of Vol Basketball Fever. We're a show dedicated exclusively to talking about the Lady Vols and news around the program. Tune in to hear thoughts and discussions from experts who cover the Lady Vols on a daily basis. Now, here's a new episode of the Lady Vol Basketball Fever podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of the Lady Vol Basketball Fever podcast. I am Nathanael Rutherford, and I'm joined once again by the great Maria Cornelius of GoVols247. Maria, thank you so much for joining me on this podcast again.
Good to see you, Nathaniel. Can't believe we've almost finished February.
Goodness, I can't believe, my favorite time of the year, March Madness, is almost here. I can't believe February. I mean, it's the shortest month, so I guess maybe we should have anticipated it being quick. But again, thank you for coming on, and thank you for all of you listening or watching. If you're on YouTube, thank you all so much. If you're on YouTube, give this channel a subscribe and give this video a like. We'd really appreciate that. If you're listening to the podcast, again, want to thank you for listening, however you're doing it. But if you're new here, thank you so much for tuning in. Please, you can subscribe to the show on all the podcast apps of choice. We have Apple Podcasts, we have Spotify, we have Google Podcasts. And actually, I haven't done this in a little bit. I wanted to hop on and look at the Apple Podcast because we have a new review. We'd love for you to leave us a 5-star review on there. And Maria, I'm trying to make a habit of people who leave us reviews reading it at the beginning of the show. I haven't done this one yet, and this has been almost 2 months since since you left this one, so I'm sorry for just not getting to it. But from Megs 1017 on Apple Podcast, left a 5-star review and said this is a great UT basketball podcast and that they love the addition of the Lady Vols episodes and the guest for those. So Maria, you're a part of that. So I wanted to read that while you're on here and say that thank you, Megs, for leaving that really nice 5-star review on Apple. So thank you for that. Yeah, no, and again, Maria, you're definitely part of the great guests on the show. I like bringing on people who cover the Lady Vols as their beat, because you guys are very knowledgeable about the team. And speaking of which, let's get into some discussion about the Lady Vols team here. Since we last talked, and actually since I last did an episode of the show too, some more just Maria, when this happened, I was immediately reminded of the conversation you and I had at the beginning of the year, where you said the only thing that could torpedo this season is injuries to key players. And right off the bat, you had Ray Burrell go down. Obviously, she came back, but then Kean Green went down, and now Jordan Horston is down. And it's just like what you said, they were having a great season, and then injuries kind of derailed things. And they're still having a good season, don't get me wrong. But when you look at kind of where things were and where they are now, it's just like, wow, this is, you're making do with what you have. I will say, me personally, I was impressed, I guess would be how I describe it, with the way they kind of responded against South Carolina. I mean, that game, I was a little afraid of getting out of hand. It never really got to, South Carolina went on a bit of a run in the third quarter and kind of took the lead and was able to control it from there out. But I was worried this game would be like a 20, 25 point loss, if I'm being honest. Yeah. And the fact they were able to hang around and keep it competitive without Jordan Horston, without Kean Green, without Marta Suarez. I mean, obviously she's been out for the whole year, but I thought that game was a good response. And then we saw them come back at home against Mississippi State. And you want to talk about controlling in the third quarter. That game was a 3-point game at halftime. And then finally it looked like whatever Kelly Harper said at halftime got through to them, and they realized their defensive assignments and came alive on offense and just absolutely blew the game open in the third quarter, all leading up to the Sunday. We'll talk about this Sunday in a second, but I wanted to get your thoughts on just how you've seen this team respond to the injury to Jordan Horston, and just, on the court, but also things that, Coach Harper or the players have said to the media too.
No, I agree with basically everything you just said. South Carolina is a game that could have gotten out of hand. I mean, a sold out crowd, ESPN game day. And Tennessee acquitted itself well. Now, obviously, the standard at Tennessee is to win, not just to acquit yourself well. But you combine that with Tennessee having to claw its way back to the top of the SEC, and that is in progress, and it certainly is accelerating a little bit quicker than I thought it would, particularly this season when, ironically enough, Tennessee, a big task ahead of them because LSU is ranked number 8 in the country. But if Tennessee beats LSU, they will tie for second in the SEC and have the number 2 seed. And an incredible accomplishment if they can do that. We'll talk about the full brackets later, but in the craziness of the SEC, you could also lose that game and tumble all the way to the 5th seed, because literally Sunday is going to sort all of this out. Mm-hmm. But a lot of things have to happen for that to occur. But I agree wholeheartedly with what you said. That started that third quarter, Tennessee just couldn't get shots to fall. South Carolina got in gear. I think they sort of settled down. It was a big crowd and a big atmosphere. I think maybe both teams kind of needed to settle a bit. But Tennessee, the credit to Tennessee is their fight didn't stop. They kept going. And I mean, South Carolina was in control of the game, but the game was never like, oh, we got this wrapped up. I mean, you knew that you had to keep fighting and keep holding off Tennessee. I think it's clear, to be without Jordan is huge. I mean, she led you in every meaningful statistical category. So you cannot negate ever. Everybody says next player up. Well, when the player you lost leads you in points, rebounding, assists, and steals, it's a little bit hard to that's a lot of next players up. To Tennessee's credit, the players that have not played a lot of minutes, I want to shout out Kaya Wynn. She has found some very good minutes for her, and she's done something with those minutes. Kelly said she's been practicing very well, and that does tend to carry over. And I think also for Kaya, there's a confidence factor. She sees now an open door to contribute, and that's where as a player you have to stay ready, because things may not be going well for you personally in terms of minutes played, but when your number's called, show them what you can do and respond to that moment. So shout out to Kaya for stepping up when her moment arrived. Tess Darby last night, I think 5 of 6 from the arc. I mean, Tess Darby could shoot like that. Tennessee's a better team, because now you cannot collapse on Tamari. I mean, Tamari Mississippi State had nobody who could guard her, but we have seen that with other smaller teams, and Tennessee still struggled to get the ball inside. They did not last night. They had 27 assists on 35 made shots.
Goodness.
I believe Jordan Walker led the way with 7. So Tennessee was a team that Mississippi State could basically do one thing: shoot from the outside. They were going to struggle to get into the paint whenever Tamari was off the floor. And Tennessee faltered to close that second quarter. They went to their zone, but did not extend it far enough. And Kelly was not happy with it. Mississippi State can shoot from 22, 23 feet. You can't just guard them at the arc. You got to guard them behind the arc. They got 3 players that can fire away from out there. And so, but you could have folded it, not folded, but you could have maybe, all right, this has gotten tight. And they came out and just unloaded in that third. They put that game away basically in the first really 3 or 4 minutes of the third quarter. So that was a long answer to say I basically agree with everything you just said.
Yeah, no, you're right, though. I mean, the way Tess was shooting at the 3 ball, 5 of 6, a career high 17 points. She also chipped in 3 boards and 2 assists, to your point about everybody getting a bunch of assists. But like you said, that really opened it up for Tamari. I mean, there were multiple times where she just had a lane and was able to do whatever. 23 and 15. I'm still shocked that she just had 6 blocks. I know I saw your reaction.
Oh, I was mad. I'm still mad about that 7th one.
Yeah, even the 7th, I'm surprised she didn't get a triple double, because it seemed like anytime Mississippi State tried to do anything in the paint, she was right there to deny them. I mean, that was the best Tamari key performance. I mean, like you said, they weren't a big team either. Mississippi State wasn't, or a talented big team at least. And I mean, take it with a grain of salt, I guess, with that. But even still, 23 and 15 and 6 blocks as well. I mean, that was just a dominant performance. 11 of 14 from the floor for her in that game. I mean, that was a really, really, really strong performance by Tamari in that game.
I agree. And towards the second half, they pretty much had learned trying to score on Tamari Key is a bad idea.
Yeah.
And they took 31 threes total for the game and hit 8 of them. So she did not get as many opportunities. That 7th one, was a clean block. It was a volleyball spike. And the force of her hitting the ball made the player fall. And there's one official who you probably thinks, okay, women aren't that athletic. They can't do fancy things like that. That's why I was mad, because I see some calls where they don't think a female player can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was not a foul, but it's all right. She got 7, and Kelly had her out to start the fourth quarter, put her back in for a little while. But with that kind of lead, Kelly didn't have her in late, and you shouldn't. She'd already turned her ankle in the first half and had to leave the court.
Yeah, her and Ray both got hurt, didn't they? That's important.
Yes, Ray twisted her ankle both in the first half, and both had to go to the back area and get worked on. And one of the loudest cheers last night was when Ray checked back in and then Tamari checked back in. These fans are holding their breath right now with all these injuries.
Yeah, I don't blame them. That was, and if you've already lost so many people to injury, it's like, yeah, I'd be holding my breath too. I mean, I get to watch just a little bit of the first half. I get to watch the entire second half though. So I didn't actually see the injuries. I saw people talking about on Twitter, because I think you and Cora Hall both tweet about Tamari coming back onto the bench. And then obviously she came back into the game not long after that too. Tennessee can't afford any more injuries, especially not if it's a Ray Burrell or Tamari Key. Like those are two must-haves right now for Tennessee moving forward. But speaking of moving forward and looking ahead here, you'd already talked about it some, and kind of the seeding and how important this Sunday's game is for the Lady Vols. It's always, the next game is the most important because it's the next game. In this case, not only is the regular season finale and senior night, so therefore, that makes it already a really important game. It's also really important because it's a very good LSU team, and the winner of this game gets the 2 seed. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Whoever wins this game gets the 2 seed, because LSU is 12-3 in SEC play. Lady Vols are 11-4. So ipso facto, Lady Vols win. They own the tiebreaker with the record over LSU because they won the head-to-head. If LSU wins, they just have the better record, so they get second seed. So that is huge in itself. Lady Vols are 14-1 at home this year too, which is also like, I mean, I talked about this in a breakdown I did for the men's team for the Tennessee Auburn game. But Maria, it seems to me that it's not maybe as true for the women's game. But even looking at the women's game and the SEC play this year, it just seems like home court advantage has been more magnified than in years past this year. And I was speculating, like wondering out loud, I wonder if it was because of COVID last year, and then players got used to there not being a lot of fans. But it just seems like definitely in the men's game that the home court advantage has been huge. And it seems like in the women's game too, that it's been teams that aren't as good, especially, looking at Lady Vols games when Lady Vols been on the road, those teams have played better against the Lady Vols than I thought they would. And part of it's also part of the Lady Vols' fault, but it just seems like home court has been huge for SEC teams and for college basketball at large this year. And this, I think the home court for the Lady Vols in this game on Sunday, it is going to be loud. It is going to be fun. It's going to be just a very interesting and fun and raucous environment for that game. And like you said, Lady Vols can go anywhere from possibly getting the 2 seed to, if they lose, to possibly getting the 5 seed because of the tiebreakers situations, how it works with Ole Miss and Florida. So it's just like, this is important, man. It's not just this game. You and I were talking before we hit record, like there are multiple games going on at the same time that are going to determine kind of the top 5. And then even looking lower, I mean, Missouri, Arkansas, and Mississippi State are all tied at 6 and 9 right now. Kentucky 7 and 8. Like they're all jumbled up except for Auburn. Like there's so many seeding possibilities that are going to change besides Auburn and South Carolina. We know 1 and 14. What about 2 through 13 though, heading into the SEC tournament?
It's going to be an incredible Sunday. I think it gets started at noon with the first game, and then Tennessee's at 2:00. It is a bizarre scenario. One, LSU is a veteran team. They're another team, like Tennessee, that has benefited from COVID years, and you've got some veteran players out there. So the environment is not going to be too big for LSU. They also set an attendance record for their own home games this year. So, and that, I haven't tracked other teams, but it certainly has been a home court advantage for Tennessee. Tennessee has not lost in the SEC at home.
Right.
Every one of their SEC losses has come on the road. And it may be the difference is the COVID year was so quiet, but teams at home, particularly teams like Tennessee, have a distinct home court advantage because of their fans. And other teams, when you came to Tennessee last year, the 2,000 fans were there. It was not what you would call a hostile environment by any means. I mean, the Rocky Top was piped in. There was no band. You look around and there's cutouts staring back at you and fans scattered around, like they're, a little pocket here and a little pocket there. So and now that your fans are back down on the floor, they're right there again. So I don't know if that's been a factor for home teams that players have spent a year not playing in hostile environments on the road, had some kind of factor. But Tennessee, despite all of these injuries, Marcus Suarez lost to the preseason. Ray Burrell, 12 lost in the season opener, lost in the first half of the season opener, 12 games. And you can look at her and see she's not fully comfortable yet. She's not the Ray Burrell she was going in preseason. That explosiveness, she was just at another level in the practices I saw. Mm-hmm. And she's rehabbed and healed from the injury, but there's still, anytime you have a knee injury, there's other issues with that, because sometimes even as you play, you start to compensate with your other leg, or that leg is not quite back yet. You can tell in her lift, sometimes of her shots, that she's not 100% the race she was when the season started. Now, can she fully get there? Absolutely, yes. She's certainly got a fantastic pro career ahead of her.
Yeah. But
this is not the player with the same explosiveness in October that she had in October and early November that you see now. But I will say, if you just look at the box score, I think she was 4 of 15 and thought, well, okay, she struggled from the field. She got really good shots. I swear that she got some that rolled out. There was not a shot she took that I thought was a bad shot. They were all makeable shots. So, I know you don't get confidence from that as a player, but she just couldn't catch a break with shots rolling out. So I think Ray took good shots. They just didn't fall. And that should not discourage her. Ray also had 5 assists, and Kelly was making a point that we need to move the ball. The ball for Tennessee cannot get stuck in anybody's hands, cannot over dribble. That's when things start to break down for Tennessee. The ball has got to keep moving, go through Tamari, and Tamari's an outstanding passer. She will find open players on the wing for a shot. So I think that was a good game for them. Kelly, she wasn't, saying she expected that kind of outcome, because you just don't win games going away in the SEC. That's been very rare this year. But she thought they were in a good place after South Carolina emotionally, that they knew they could compete. They had adjusted to losing Jordan. Now, I'm not saying you really adjust to losing Jordan and that what she can do, but you adjust to having to play without her. And they've made that step. And then senior days to me are always interesting. One, you're highly motivated. It's also highly emotional. I have seen teams come out and they just can't get settled down emotionally to start the game. Now, the good thing for Tennessee is the 3 seniors who are departing, Kean Green, obviously injured, would not play. Ray Burrell, veteran player. Alexis Dye, veteran player. These are not players that are suddenly going to be thrust into the starting lineup or have not been accustomed to this. They're used to being on the floor at tip. So they do have that going for them. And then, of course, Jordan Walker, as we talked about, has just announced on Twitter, she's going to run it back, come back for one more year. She has that extra COVID year. She's taking it. She's working on her MBA, and I applaud her. Get that degree while you're here in college. Because if you leave, then you got to come back and finish. Go ahead and get it. Get it while you're in the flow of college, in the flow of class, in the flow of studying, before real life and all those obligations start to catch up with you. Get it done. Plus, she's a veteran player with a lot of minutes logged and an asset for Tennessee. So back to senior day. I've seen a lot of emotions. The pregame is different because you're doing the presentations and the jerseys in the frame and the flowers and then you got to put all that aside and somehow get ready to play basketball. LSU's a very good team, a very confident team in the way they've turned it around this season. Kim Mulkey, everybody knows Kim Mulkey. I mean, they didn't go out and hire a new coach that was adjusting to the SEC. Kim Mulkey is, and although not coached in the SEC, has played plenty of SEC teams and has a lot of experience as a coach and has won 3 national titles. I think I've got that right. This is going to be a gut check game for everybody. LSU has a lot to play for. I mean, they were predicted to finish, I don't know, way down in the SEC somewhere. They got preseason, they were like mid or low pack. I mean, people weren't, I don't remember where I voted them. I don't think anybody had Ole Miss and Florida competing for a top 4 seed when the season started, which just goes to show you how crazy the SEC is. But LSU has a lot to play for, and postseason seeding, not just SEC, but NCAA in a game like this. Mm-hmm. So they're wanting to earn that second place outright, not have to share it with anybody. And Tennessee is wanting to say, all right, everybody was starting to count us out. You know, we lose Burrell, we lose Kean, we lose some games on the road. Jordan goes out. They can, like you said, they can win that game. They finish with an identical record. And suddenly you got a tie for second. Tennessee wins head-to-head. Tennessee's number 2 seed in the SEC tournament. Here's the wrinkle, and there always is one. I've always said you're seeding except South Carolina. I mean, they've clinched. They only had 1 loss to Missouri to open the SEC, and since then they've rattled off 14 straight wins in the SEC. So here's the weird wrinkle. And in senior days, you always keep an eye on. It is Ole Miss's senior day. South Carolina is on the road. They've clinched the SEC. They're still the number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament. If there was ever a time to catch a team not as fully motivated as you might be, I'm not saying they aren't motivated to win. Yeah. But the things that matter in the SEC regular season, you've accomplished. Win or lose doesn't change anything for you with the SEC. You're still the champion. You're still the number 1 seed. So, I mean, they tip at the same time as Tennessee. So I'm sure Media Row will be watching. The coaches, can't, unless they get updates. But if Tennessee were to lose to LSU and Ole Miss were to beat South Carolina and Florida, which is having its senior day hosting Missouri, were to beat Missouri, you have a 3-way tie for 3rd place. And you do the tiebreakers first, and those don't settle anything. They all went 1-1. You do tiebreakers among the 3 of them, and they all went 1-1 against each other in various combinations. So that does nothing. Then you go to how they fared against the number 1 seed. That's South Carolina. Only Ole Miss would have been the one to beat South Carolina. Yep. So Ole Miss would end up with the 3rd seed. Florida would take the 4th seed, because they won the head-to-head against Tennessee. Here is where everything went crazy. And I did my bracket thing figuring Tennessee could finish no lower than 4th because I was messing around with a legal pad and pencil the other night. I did not have, and I should know better, and that's SEC. I did not have Vanderbilt beating Florida. This is what set all this up. Once again, that was Vandy's senior game. And it was a close game. They led from the beginning. I think Florida took an early lead, and then or Florida had a 1-point lead late. I think Vanderbilt took an early lead. Nothing outrageous. It was like 5, 6, 7 points. And then it was a 1, 2, 3-point game at the end. And turnovers is what jumped out. Both teams had a ton. Florida had 28. Vandy had 21. So that game, So, I mean, is it likely that South Carolina would lose to Ole Miss? Absolutely not. Does Tennessee want to rely on another team for its seeding? Heck no. If you're Tennessee, you got tunnel vision. Beat LSU, you're the number 2 seed. That's all you have to worry about, because those other games are going to be going on at the same time. Nothing's going to be settled when you take the court. So you have just got to keep yourself laser focused on LSU. And it will be a heck of a LSU Tennessee games are epic no matter what. They tend to come down to last shots. They tend to have bodies all over the floor. they LSU Tennessee games tend to be brawls, and I don't mean that literally, like there's a fight on the court, but they are hot. Everything is contested. Every shot, every rebound. Nothing comes easy when Tennessee and LSU hit the court. Nothing.
No, and like you said, this LSU team, number 8 in the country, they're playing for obviously the number 2 seed in the SEC tournament. But they're playing for, like you said, a lot of stuff postseason, even beyond the SEC tournament. They're playing for a potential 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. Even, I mean, they're playing for a lot in this game. And you're right, like looking at the history of these two teams, and I guess more what's happened recently. LSU won and Lady Vols won last year by 1 point. LSU won the year before that by 10. Lady Vols won the year before that by 5. It was a 3-point game and a 9-point game. So it's been really close over the last 5 years, or I guess 5 or 6 meetings between the two teams, because they played so many times in the last just like 3 seasons. They played in the SEC tournament once. They played in Baton Rouge twice. They played Knoxville twice. So I mean, they've played just a lot in the last 3 or 4 seasons. So it's been close. Like you said, they've been a lot of just brawls and a lot of really close contests in those games. You brought up 2 different things I wanted to touch on. One of them was Jordan Walker coming back. I want to get to her secondly, but the first one I want to talk about, you mentioned it being senior night for Lady Vols, and I imagine Kean Green, even with her having the injury, she is this is her. She's done. This is her last go around. This will be her actual senior night where she's being honored and stuff. Same for Alexis Dye. I'm pretty sure she doesn't have any more eligibility left.
No, this was her 5th year. She has none left. Yeah.
But we have Jordan Walker, who knows that she's coming back, even though she was a graduate. She is coming back for next year. The only other senior that I'm looking at and seeing on the roster is listed, at least, is Ray Burrell. I imagine though that she has the COVID year. I imagine with the year that she's had and the injury she's had, she's more. I haven't heard an announcement. I don't know if you have or not. Maybe I just missed it, but I imagine she's coming back next season.
No, she's made it clear she's ready to go.
Okay, never mind.
She's ready to pursue. She hasn't said that in so many words, but she said it in so many words. I mean, I don't know that she's done an interview where she said, I don't know. She made it clear at the beginning of the season she was not interested in a 5th year. She's ready for the next stage of her life. She's ready to start her pro career, and where she'll get drafted, I don't know. Did the injury hurt her falling lower than people had her as top 5, top 6, top 7 seed? It very well could, but she has such an upside, and scouts know what she can do. I mean, they saw her last year. So she will be a player that will be playing at the next level. And then obviously overseas opportunities are where tremendous money exists too. And then you have this new Athletes Unlimited where they've been playing in Vegas that a lot of the players are putting that on. So Ray strikes me as a young lady who knows this is what I want in life and it's time to go get it. So I do believe those will be the 3 that I would expect to do the whole flowers and parents and frame jerseys and highlight films and just obviously a great 3. I mean, Alexis Dye, what a great player. I wish she had more eligibility, but she does not.
Yeah, she's been really, really solid for the Lady Vols this year and has given them along with Maria Cornelius and Jordan Horston and Ray Burrell even too, like just another great rebounding option and as a kind of I guess like a hybrid guard forward is what she is, but. No, I like Alexis Dye. She's been a nice solid addition for the Lady Vols. And I guess this is technically not really an addition, but it is an addition for next year with Jordan Walker. You already brought it up with her announcing she's coming back next year, which she just announced that like shortly before we started recording this podcast here on Friday night. What's the impact of her coming back next season? Because I looked at, with her when it was originally slated where she was going to graduate and be done, I was looking ahead the next season thinking, wow, that's you're going to have to rely on a young player to be the point guard next season, or you're just going to hand it off to Jordan Horston and say, hey, we're going to need you to run point next year along with everything else. I was very interested to see like, where are they going to go with point guard? I think personally it's huge for Jordan Walker to come back. And I think that's, an obvious answer. But I think with her being a veteran presence, with her being just a very solid, just point guard in general, she can score, but she's also very good at distributing the ball. She just has that veteran savvy about her too at that point guard position. I think it's big for a number of reasons. You don't have to kind of make Jordan Horston play out of position more or less, for what you want her to do. You don't have to rely on one of your younger players who be, a second year player to, come in and try to be filling that role. And you don't have to go get a transfer to come in and be a new player and try to take over that position. You have someone who's been here for a couple years at this point now and who has performed really well when she's been healthy. So I think it was, the announcement could not have come at a better time because, we're heading to senior day, like you said. And, it's good to know beforehand that she's going to be coming back. But I think it's just, to me, it makes me feel a lot better about next year's team and just kind of how that can steady the boat next year for them with her coming back and being the projected starting point guard for them next year too, as long as she's healthy.
It's an interesting dynamic. This is just me spitballing, as they say. I haven't, I will interview Kelly like April or May after the season's over, June, just some kind of recap of the season and looking ahead. So I know Kelly's probably not even thinking about, okay, what she's thinking about LSU, not who's going to play where. Yeah. Next fall. Jordan Horston can play the point, but I think they would much prefer Jordan off the ball, particularly her ability to rebound and get to the offensive glass. She is such an outstanding rebounder and slasher. Jordan can set up at the 2, 3, and 4 sometimes. So the interesting thing about Jordan Walker is she was a 2 guard in college. She was a point guard in high school, but played 2 guard at Central Michigan. Tennessee brought her in late. She transferred late. It was in July, and she had 2 years because of injury. She tore ACL. She had 2 years of eligibility when she got to Tennessee. So she was a typical graduate transfer, and that, yes, she had earned her bachelor's degree in 3 years, but she still had 2 years left because she had missed a full season. And it worked out where she and Jordan Horston were splitting time at point, because remember, Tennessee lost Zay Green and Jasmine Massengill, right? After Kelly got hired, those were 2 in the transfer portal. And then Mimi Collins, of course. Jasmine Massengill was the following year. She played 1 year for Kelly, but after Kelly arrived, Avina Westbrook was out. Zay Green tore her ACL, 3 games into the season?
Yeah, I remember that happening.
And that moved Horston to point, Jasmine to point. And so then Kelly is entering her second year thinking Jasmine's going to come back at point. She transfers to Kentucky. And I remember looking at the roster and later talking to Jordan for an interview later. And I said, when that happened, she says, yeah, I looked at the roster and said, oh my goodness, I'm PG1. And she was she was recruited by Tennessee really to play wing forward. Not that she cannot play point. For USA basketball, when she won the gold medal with I think it was under 18s, under 19s. I never can keep up if it was under 17s, 18, 19. One of those groups. It was an under group. May have been under 17 or 18. Don't even quote me on that. It was a USA under team. She played the 4 for them. So because she's 6'2". So and so now Kelly is looking for a point guard in the portal, and Jordan Walker pops in July of 2019. 20, 21. No, it would have been July of 20. Yeah. Yes, during the pandemic. Yes, because she never visited campus. She met Kelly in person when she got here and knew she had played point in high school and knew she could be a combo guard. So then brought Jordan Walker in. It is possible. I mean, Jordan, everything you said is correct. Veteran presence, plays hard, understands. I mean, tenacious on defense, a high motor, high energy kind of player. She does not have to stay at point to contribute to Tennessee. Last night, obviously Brooklyn Miles is another point guard that Tennessee has been working with this season. And then last night, Kaya Wynn ran the point position at times. So what I think Kelly is trying to do is have options at that position. And that brings me to the other point at the Mississippi State game. Minnesota transfer point guard Jasmine Powell was on an official visit. And since she's in the portal, she can take an official visit. Tennessee pays for the visit so they can have 48 hours and have a real visit. I mean, the game and stay on campus and see things. And so Tennessee, I don't know what she's going to do. That's, you never know. The transfer portal, that doesn't mean Tennessee gets a player on campus, they're going to come here.
Right.
But that could be an even bigger wrinkle in this whole point guard puzzle if Jasmine Powell were to pick Tennessee. And she is a tenacious defender. Absolutely. On-ball defender that just sticks to you when you get off the bus. So, in the SEC,
sounds like
you need
a
guards.
good Kelly Harbor player.
You need guards like that. And she has a tremendous experience at point guard, passes well in transition. She could shoot, distribute the ball. So Tennessee could have and you see times even now when Kelly's got two point guards on the floor. Where they interchange. So there's that wrinkle at point. I'm trying to run the numbers. Tennessee's got 14 players. And we know 14 players right now, counting the injured players like Marta.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 will graduate. So you're down to 11. Justine Passat is your one signee. That puts it at 12. Tess Darby's sister, Edie Darby, is a walk-on, but that still counts towards your 15 total. So you've got 13. Technically, you've got 2 spots. And I always say this, I don't know of any player transferring from Tennessee at the end of the year, but in this day and age, I am more surprised when it does not happen. Because with the transfer portal, it's a whole different thing. So Tennessee could have all 11 returnees come back or not. You never know. I always tell people, I never saw Jasmine. I didn't think Jasmine Massengill would leave. She decided to go to Kentucky. So never anticipate that your roster won't look different. And I'm not, like I said, I'm not hinting that anybody is. I have heard nothing about anybody leaving, just that I'm not surprised when it does happen at this point anymore. It used to be a player left the team, you were kind of surprised.
Yep.
And now it's like, oh, they're in the portal. I mean, Tennessee's recruiting 2 players in the portal right now, and Jasmine Powell. And of course, we talked about this, a very big visitor will be here Sunday for the LSU game, and Rakia Jackson, a 6'2" wing who also can play 3 and 4, who transferred from Mississippi State in January and was the leading scorer in the SEC at over 20 points per game when she left the team, where she has returned to Detroit, keep in one of the lowest of the low-key recruitments I've ever tried to track. She says nothing on social media, nothing. She doesn't put up photos or retweet thing. I mean, nothing. She did. And that's also the difference between a 16-year-old high school kid and a 20-year-old college kid. They've been through the recruiting process. They're not looking for all of that again. She would technically have 2 years, but a player like her, that's probably a top 3, top 4 draft pick. So you would look for 1 more year in college and then be ready to go. For Tennessee to get her on campus, that's huge. Absolutely huge. I do want to point out one thing, the Ball Out, they're at theballout.com. They broke the story first this morning, right before midday, about Rakia Jackson being here. It's on theballout.com. It is an excellent story. It talks about Harper, what she's doing at Tennessee, the emergence of Tennessee back into a national power, and how a player like Rakia Jackson is the difference between Sweet 16 and Elite 8 and Final Four. So go. They're on Twitter at the Ball Out or the Ball Out Media, and then they're on theballout.com. So head over there if you want to see that. And I mean that she's a game changer. I mean, she's a seasoned SEC player. She visited here. Ironically, she was class of 2019. She visited Tennessee. She was a big time target that Holly wanted. Ended up going to Mississippi State. She's had 3 coaches at Mississippi State: Vic Schaefer, then Nikki McCray-Penson, and now Doug Novak. So she's 3 seasons in college, 3 different head coaches. And I think she's looking for a different culture, a different environment. I mean, nobody can say she didn't give Mississippi State a chance. She gave it a chance through 3 different coaches. And ironically, the official visit, she was here on the same weekend that Jordan Horston was out of high school. They're Isaiah Cook, who went to South Carolina. All three of them visited Tennessee on the same day, same weekend back in 2018, because they would have still been seniors in high school. So it's not like she's not already familiar with Tennessee, obviously not familiar with this coaching staff, minus the fact, and you know how women's basketball recruiting is, the tentacles overlap everywhere. When she was in high school, Samantha Williams was the lead recruiter at Louisville and recruited her to Louisville. So she would have already established a fantastic relationship because Louisville was in her final list. So she already knows Samantha Williams. She's obviously gotten to know Kelly. She already knows Jordan Horston. It's not like she's coming in without any idea what Tennessee's like. Or again, does that mean she's coming here? No. I mean, she hasn't said anything, and she will have her pick of schools. I guarantee you, when she entered that portal, her phone likely just exploded. Probably one. I'd say she probably got in excess of 100 or 200 inquiries, probably in the first 24 hours.
Yeah, she's going to be, she is not going to be, she is probably the most sought after transfer, and one of the most sought after transfers probably in the last couple of years in the women's game. Because like you said, like she's a game changer. She's leading scorer. She's really efficient. She can rebound some too. Like she's just a, I was looking at her stats too, because I remember her playing at Mississippi State, but I was just wanting to look at her stats. Like she's just, like you said, she could be the difference between, making the tournament and making a little bit of a run to making the tournament and possibly going deep into the tournament. And really, I mean, Jasmine Powell's interesting too. Like I thought she can be an interesting addition even as a smaller guard. She's someone who actually rebounds the ball a lot better than I expected her to. Because I think she's only like she's listed at 5'6".
Listed at 5'6", yeah.
Yeah, and she this past year, actually her entire Minnesota career, for the 68 games she played, averaged almost 13 points and averaged almost 4 rebounds a game and 4.5 assists. And of course, some of that was her freshman year, where she averaged 12.1 and the 3.1 assists. But you look at the last couple of years, her sophomore year at Minnesota was 14.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and 1.5 steals. That's pretty good. Like you said, that kind of tenacity on defense, just looking even at the stats, and I was looking at watching her film and things. I think that would fit really well with Kelly Harper, and just the attitude and the tenacity she wants to bring every single game from her players in the Lady Vol way. But she's also not a bad shooter, like 31% from three, 77 to 75% on the free throw line. Please, this Lady Vols team needs someone like that from the free throw line. I think I was going to ask you kind of already had mentioned don't have a whole lot of intel on them, because for one, Rakia doesn't talk to the media much. But I was going to ask if you had like a feel on either of them, but it seems like it's a little early to really tell. But yeah, you're right. Like this team anymore, it is shocking if you don't have at least one or two transfers off. And like you said, I'm not saying anyone needs to transfer or anything like that, but it would not shock me at all if someone transfers off the roster because of any number of reasons. Want to go closer to home, they're not happy playing time, or whatever. Like it doesn't, just because someone transfers doesn't mean that the culture's bad or that they're gonna fall out from the team either. So I think sometimes people will assume that, like, oh, they're transferring, that what happened? Were they unhappy? Was there a fallout? That's not always the case. There's lots of reasons why players transfer. So and Lady Vols, we've talked about it on this podcast before, you and me specifically, Maria. They've had some pretty decent luck with transfers. I mean, look at Jordan Walker's a transfer, Alexis Dye is a transfer, Keegan Green's a transfer. Like, and those are three players who have had a huge impact on the team this year, starting or just coming off the bench. And Keegan's case is there as well. But I mean, next year's team could be I wouldn't say just as heavily reliant, because it's not like this team is heavily reliant, but relying on the same kind of degree of heaviness, I guess, on transfers as this year's team was, where you have 3 playing key spots, and next year you could have technically Jordan Walker would still be a transfer, but I mean, she also would have been here for 3 years too. So it feels weird counting her as a transfer anymore, but you'd have her and potentially 2 others. And then you said Justine Pissot coming in, and then you'd also have the freshmen this year being sophomores next year. And that's really what I think what makes me excited and intrigues me about next year's team too, is I won't get to have ourselves talk about next year, but looking at those young players like Kaya and Brooklyn and Carolyn and Sarah, all 4 of them being sophomores, especially Sarah Puckett. She has really impressed me this year with her play. I love her attitude on the court, and Brooklyn too. But I mean, all those girls becoming sophomores next year and second year players. next year's team, that's going to be interesting. Next year's team, I think, is a transfer or two, like a really big impact transfer or two away from really taking another step. Not, I'm not saying Final Four worthy or maybe even Elite Eight worthy, but taking another step and staying healthy. Like, cross your fingers, staying healthy to taking that, I guess, the next feasible step for the Lady Vols of whatever they do this year, taking, furthering that next year.
I agree. And while the roster, could be kind of lengthy, Kelly has certainly shown that she will play deep in her roster.
Oh yeah.
So it's not like she's going to ride 6 players and, 7 and the rest are going to play, a minute. I mean, Kelly will find minutes for players as the season goes on. And the good thing about where Tennessee is trending now, and this is a benefit not just to Tennessee, but to the players themselves. For the last several years, this year being an exception, Tennessee has started freshmen because they had to. We're like, Renaya Davis started as a freshman, and she even said it might have been better if I'd come into a veteran team where I wasn't just thrown out there from the get-go. That's not always fair. They're getting a lot of minutes, but they don't have anybody to teach them. And they don't really have an upperclassman to learn from. And Tennessee is now look at the senior class next year. They're getting back to where they have veteran players who can teach the ones coming up. And the freshmen can compete for time and get on the court. And if you're good enough to start, then by all means start. But you're not starting because you have to. And that can be a disservice sometimes to freshmen to have to push them out there so quickly, because the SEC is a brutal, brutal classroom to learn on the fly. It really is. It's far better if you can learn in chunks of the syllabus, not here's the whole syllabus, go, good luck. So it'll be interesting to see that in terms of how extensive, how deep the roster could be with injuries. You've got to have available players. I mean, Kelly has always said, I want to play my backups because I never know when I'm going to need them.
Yeah.
And she needs them. And with COVID, she said, you never knew. So I don't have, the visit yesterday went well. I mean, you can see the recruit there, where they sit. I mean, I've rarely heard a visit didn't go well. There's been like 2 in the whole time I've covered this where I heard that the visit was horrible. I'm like, okay, we can cross that one off. So it's rare that it's not a good visit. And she's another player that will have options. She was all freshman in the Big Ten. She was second team Big Ten, all Big Ten as a sophomore. And you got to think, the Maryland's in the Big Ten and Rutgers, Michigan State, Indiana. I mean, there's some very good teams in the Big Ten. So it's not like she was making all conference team and, a conference that wasn't Power 5. Not that, Alexis Dye was, she was not in a Power 5 conference, but she certainly showed she could play in one. So I don't know what either one's going to do. Obviously, Rakia, let's see, game is, she's probably, Friday? She's probably already here because she would be like a Friday to probably. Both of the players, interestingly enough, this turns out, kind of coincidental. They're both from Detroit. They didn't play together. They didn't play on the same high school team, but they obviously know each other. You know how you know people and both were, really, good recruits. So in their high school classes. So It'll be interesting. The good thing for Tennessee is you are getting these players here. That's step one. You got to get them on campus.
Yep. Absolutely.
And once you get them on campus, you've got a good shot. Is Tennessee in it? Absolutely. Does that mean they're going to get them? Absolutely not. It's not like they're the only school in pursuit. So
no, you took words out of my mouth. I was going to say, if you get them on campus, anything can happen. That's the old adage, but it's true though. It's very true. But Maria, I think that's a good place to kind of end it. Again, big game coming on Sunday. We'll know all about the SEC seeding and stuff after Sunday. We'll know, and we'll tweet out stuff at Vol Hoops Fever, and of course Maria will tweet out everything. But for all of you listening, if you want to look at that report from the Ball Out Media, we just retweeted it from the Vol Hoops Fever Twitter account, just at Vol Hoops Fever, and Maria also tweeted about it earlier today as well. So go check it out there if you want to. But Maria, before we let you go here, again, thank you so much for coming on tonight. Let everybody know that I assume, again, everybody listening to this probably already follows you and reads your stuff, but just in case they don't, where can they find you and where can they read your stuff?
At Cornelius on Twitter. I'm also have a Lady Vols coverage Facebook page. You can find me searching probably my name and Lady Vols. Instagram is the same, Cornelius. I put up a lot of pregame photos there. GoVols247 is where I put up stories. They also, I never know when we're doing these, but we're doing one now through February 28th. There is a 50% off special for annual subscribers. It also includes, it's a 50% off would put it well under $100. I'm not sure what it would put it. May even put it like in the 50 or 60 range or somewhere in there. I'd have to go look. Because when I click on it, I'm already in it, so it doesn't tell me the price. But you get with that, if you do that annual, you get Paramount Plus free. It's a $99 value, and you can activate that account and have that free for as long as you're an annual subscriber. And there's a lot of content, sports, SEC Game of the Week, things like that are on that, sports, movies, TV. So if you go to GoVols247.com, it's right up there, top of the page, 50% off. So just let people know. It's a good time to lock in, because if you get in now, it'll take you all the way through postseason and baseball and softball and summer and SEC media days and fall. And next thing you know, it's basketball season again, and football, of course, kind of a big deal around here.
Yeah, just a little bit. So it's basketball, though. I mean, basketball's gotten even bigger over the last 10, 15 years for both the men's and women's. And it's nice to hopefully see Lady Vols back on the rise, and hopefully that coinciding with kind of the reawakening of just the Vol fan base being rabid for winners. So hopefully they'll feed into that. But thank you so much for, Maria, for coming on here. And thank you again for all of you who are listening / watching this podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, subscribe to our podcast. And as I mentioned at the top, leave a review and we'll read it here on the show. Hopefully I will not wait another almost 2 months to read it if you all leave one again. Thank you again, Megs, for that nice review. And again, thank you all of you who've listened and helped support the show. We're getting March. We're getting to the premier time for basketball. So we're here for you to talk about all Vols and Lady Vols through March Madness. But go ahead. Yeah.
One other quick thing is, Lady Vol fans will kill me if I forget. Mickey Dearstone, the voice of the Lady Vols, is retiring at the end of this season. His final regular season home game will be Sunday in Knoxville. 2:00. Tickets are available. If you can get there, you live in this area or drivable, get there. A huge, loud, rowdy crowd would be very, very good for Tennessee Sunday. And what a send-off for Mickey. He's going to be honored along with the seniors. He's already said he's going to be a basket case. He's going to be bawling the whole way through it. But knowing Mickey, he's a pro. He'll get right back on the radio and do his job. He will be with the team through postseason. But that is the end of an incredible era in Lady Vols. I mean, he's one of the best play-by-play people I've ever heard. He's funny. He's witty. He calls the action impeccably. I mean, he's going to be missed. Talk about big shoes to fill behind Pat Summitt. There's going to be huge shoes to fill behind Mickey Dearstone. So I just wanted to shout him out before we ended it tonight.
Yeah, thank you. I meant to bring that up earlier and it completely slipped my mind. So yes, thank you for mentioning Mickey here at the end of the podcast and the show. I will be there on Sunday, barring any sort of illness or horrible weather or something. I'm going to be there Sunday, so I will try to lend my voice to help make the crowd nice and loud for the LSU game. And also, you said, give Mickey a nice send-off, because he's been there. He's been doing this for over 20 years, over 2 decades of Lady Vols stuff. And he's done stuff for Tennessee longer than that, but for specifically Lady Vols has been over 2 decades. So he's been the voice of the Lady Vols for a very long time. And like you said, does a very good job of it and provides really nice color and detail to these games. So yes, definitely, if you're going to go, like you said, definitely send Mickey Dearstone off with a great send-off, and Thompson Boling, because hopefully this won't be his last game for a long time. Hopefully he's going to be out there calling another 7, 8, 9 games for the Lady Vols in the SEC tournament and NCAA tournament. That'd be very nice. But yeah, definitely big shout out to Mickey Dearstone and him stepping down. But thank you, Maria, again, for coming on here, and thank you for saying that as well. And again, thank you for our listeners. Signing off for Maria, I'm Nathaniel, and this has been another episode of the Lady Vol Basketball Fever Podcast.